Today I'm at Lake Achensee, a lake between Munich and Innsbruck. It is located between two mountain ranges, the Karwendel mountain and the Rofan range. And here in Achensee there is two paragliding areas. One is called Zwölferkopf in Pertisau and the other one is called Wolfan, which is located directly over there. I have had a look at all the takeoffs and the landings, and I put both paragliding areas together in this video because actually it's one area and the landings can be reached from each takeoff, doesn't matter Zwölferkopf or Rofan, if the wind is okay. And we will also learn something about the wind today. Achensee really is a nice and touristic place. The first destination is Zwölferkopf, a mountain of about 1,490 meters height. Taking the cable car, we can see paragliders flying in front of the building. That's because there's a famous paragliding school here doing acro training over the lake. And there we are at the Zwölferkopf takeoff. Participants of the acro training from the local school are preparing themselves to get in the air. Just let's have a look at the windsock. It's about 10:30 in the morning and there's not a lot of wind yet. It is takeoff. If we look at the paragliding area, starting Zwölferkopf in Pertisau, we find landings directly at the shore of the lake, and the takeoff is up on this Zwölferkopf mountain to the north. Here we see the Zwölferkopf takeoff to the north in detail. According to the German Hangglider Association, there's also a takeoff to the west and a takeoff to the southwest, but except of the northern takeoff, I have never seen anybody launching at the other places, so I don't want to recommend them. Easy takeoff at an easy launch site. 5 minutes later, already we are thinking about a landing. Officially the landing is a big field in the middle of Pertisau. But as the wind comes from the east, I consider another option. There's a small landing in front of this hotel. This is always used if the wind is from the east or from the south over the lake. You get in, downwind leg to the west, base leg, and then the final leg to the east. The main landing should not be considered an east wind situation, as there's a tree range to the east of the landing. Here we can see the hotel with the small landing to the left, and right in front of us, on the right hand side of the road, we can see the main landing. Also nice to see is the tree range, which is directly in front of the landing, causing a leeward situation in east conditions. As shown in the animation, I first head towards the west, then I turn around to the left and I do the final leg towards the east against the wind direction. Yes, it's a very small place and I will miss it for about 50 meters or something like this. Well, so here it is, the small landing of about 20 to 30 meters in size. Here a short view to the main landing. I'll come back to this later. I changed to Rofan on the other side of the lake. While Zwölferkopf faces to the north, Rofan faces to the south. Let's have a look to the paragliding area Rofan, where the landing is in Maurach and the takeoff is just above the cable car station on Rofan mountain to the southwest, and a 20 minutes walk there's a second takeoff also to the southwest. While I had about 20 takeoffs at 12 Kopf in the past 3 years, it is the first time for me to be on Rofan mountain. Here we are at the takeoff. It seems to be an easy broad field, but there are signs from the local paragliding club not to use this takeoff without introduction. And there is a sign next to the takeoff indicating that it's very dangerous in case of north wind. 2 tandem pilots appeared and they told me that I should get out at this takeoff as soon as possible. 2 o'clock is already very late in the afternoon for this takeoff. Normally the north wind should already be here. Today it seems to be a little bit different, but if the north wind comes, we might spill over in rotors and make this a dangerous takeoff place. Getting out to the air is a little bit tricky anyway. On the right hand side we see a sign of the local paragliding club. The blue arrow indicates getting out is not straightforward to the ridge, but first to the right and then to the left along the skiing slope. I am not 100% sure if I'm going to start today. We will see. Besides this place here, the tandem pilot told me also it is possible to take off at a curve of the skiing slope down there. That would be also an option, but I think I will just view the situation for a couple of minutes and see what happens. He told me it's like a roller coaster now to get out. The windsock is pointing to the east and the tandem pilot wants to get out to the west. Well, in my opinion, I would not like to start here now in these conditions. Also the wind sometimes is also to the south. Let's have a look. Glider is up and the tandem pilot has to run. Yeah, and finally he's out. A final view at his takeoff from below. And around the corner there is also a takeoff for the hang gliders. I am at a landing in Maurach now, and behind me is the windsock, and I decided not to take off from Rofan. Why? Well, it was the first time for me being up on this mountain, and except of the tandem pilots nobody else has been up there. That was already a little bit strange, and the tandem pilots told me that the wind situation anyway is not really good anymore and it gets worse and worse. And then also the windsock went to the northeastern direction once at the takeoff, and this is an absolute no-go here because normally in the afternoon also you have here the Bavarian north wind. But my main concern was the wind situation at the landing down here. Well, now we see it's a steady east wind and it would have been no problem for landing. But normally, the north wind comes in and gets stronger and stronger in the afternoon. And at 12 o'clock, where I've been in the morning, takeoff is not possible anymore for a couple of hours. And then you have to wait until the wind calms down. And then it might be possible that soaring is an option until the late evening hours. Well, let's go back later in the day and try our luck. The Maurach landing associated with the Rofan takeoff is a huge field with no obstacles. So here again we have the whole situation of the takeoff and also of the landing. If the wind comes from the north or the west, you do a left circle besides the lake and then turn into this landing towards the west or towards the north. Otherwise, you do a right circle at the bottom of the field and then get into the landing towards the south. After the failed attempt to take off at Rofan, I went back to Zwölferkopf in Pertisau. Meanwhile, I passed the second Rofan takeoff on the other side of the lake where I have not been, so I just show it in the animation. First, a review of the Wolfan takeoff number 1, where I have just been getting out like a slalom skier. From the cable car, it is only 20 minutes walk to get to the second Rofan takeoff. This place is much more exposed to the ridge and easier to get out into the air. A different perspective to this takeoff, from where you can either use the thermals to get up Rofan mountains or cross the lake to the Pertisau landings. Arrival at the Zwölferkopf cable car. Half an hour later, I was back at Zwölferkopf mountain and the wind situation has changed totally. So we have a strong north wind now at the takeoff here. Takeoff in these conditions was quite easy and pretty straightforward. And it didn't take long and I was well above the takeoff and I was able to soar in the north wind for 1.5 hours. There have been a lot of sailing boats out on the lake and the north wind now was already so strong that kiting was possible. It is about 4:30 in the afternoon and normally the north wind should calm down at this time, but today it was a little bit different. When I decided to go for landing, it was now already 6 o'clock in the evening. I nearly had no ground speed over the lake towards the north. But from this position on I was able to see the windsock at the landing already and it did not indicate a lot of wind. The situation over the lake seemed to be different than at the landing. I stayed at this position on the lake until I was sure that I could get to the landing without having to make a lot of turnarounds over the land. The last meters to the landing field, stay above or to the right of the road and not go to the left of the road too much because there might be rotors coming from the north wind over the lake. Here we can see the two landings again, the small one to the east and the main one to the north wind. Approaching to the main landing is quite easy, getting from the lake to the landing place. And one more time again, please avoid these areas in the back here if the north wind is too strong because of the rotors caused by the north wind spilling over the landscape. The final meters before the landing, now we can see the landing field directly in front of us and also buildings and the mountains to the north where the northern wind can spill over to this landing place. So finally landed here in Pertisau. It was an exciting day at this great paragliding area and I'm quite happy that I did not launch at Rofan mountain as the north wind came up so late and so strong. Well, the wind situation here is quite tricky, and I think it's better to be cautious than to get into any problematic situation. Here, a final look at Rofan mountain, and I hope you enjoyed the video.